Okay, good morning, everybody. It's breaking news Monday morning here. This is day 2 of our red flag warning. Cale Casey with you back again with Norm McDonald, Incident Commander. This is not just a break it down session. This is a pop-up emergency community meeting to make sure everybody's getting the information of what happened yesterday on the fire. We did have the red flag day yesterday. That makes it an extremely hard day for firefighters and of course the community in general because it was a scary day out there. We want to make sure you're seeing the imagery of the fire itself. Last night late we got the videos up from the field. There's 5 videos from the 36 corridor where you can see the fire activity itself driven by that northeast wind that Brooke Tabor, who will be joining us here in a bit, described exactly perfectly yesterday morning. Chris Moore is also here with us, our fire behavior analyst. They'll address things after Norm gets a chance to kind of regroup this organization and tell you what happens in a blow-up day. We call this a blow-up because I sat on the 36 yesterday and watched this plume develop, and we knew because we had technology above from the military ship called the Direct Real-Time Infrared. It's called a DIRTY, and it was looking down into that plume to see where the ember shower was going. Lots was happening up there with the fire crews and accountability. And Norm, what happens to a team like that when we've been engaged for so long in our plan, trying to keep this fire south of the 36, trying to protect Ruth Valley and everybody around it, and then you have a day like that?
Well, that's something that we do plan for, and we had planned for. We knew we were going to have a wind event today and the last 2 days, so that was something that we'd been planning for the last few shifts. I think just the first indicator of the conditions we were going to have actually took place on the west zone. It's where CAL FIRE is working, and we had fire that came out of the Yolo Bolo. That was about noon. They had spotting up to 3 miles. That triggered spots outside their line and evacuation orders for that country down here to the south of us. So that was just the first indicator of the conditions we were going to see as we were working on our fire. For us up on the north end, and this is just south of 36, we've been talking about that for the last few days. That was our critical piece of line. We had basically a plume-dominated fire at the north as those winds came in and sheared that over. As Cale mentioned, we had ember showers that covered pretty much the head of Shaw, the Ruth Lake, all the way out to about 4 miles out. So we picked up spots west of Het and Shaw, a couple miles west and south. So that's some long distance spotting with dry fuel conditions, topography in there. All those spots were receptive, and so we've got fire established both sides of the lake. What that triggers for us is, one, just accountability of our people. We pulled folks off the line. We had folks go to safety zones. We re-engaged where we could safely, but our first priority is our firefighter safety. We've been really stressing the last few days about that evacuation order and the importance of people getting out of there. And for days like yesterday and days like we're going to see today, that's why that's in place. And that's why it's very important that if you're in an evacuation area, you have to leave. It's for firefighter safety, it's for your safety, and it's to let us operate in those areas. When people are in those houses, that restricts what we can do. It restricts our efforts, restricts our aircraft. So we're asking you, if you're in an evacuated area, please leave today. We'll get that lifted as soon as we can, but we need to let firefighters operate in there and do so in a safe manner. So yesterday, not only did we have the impacts from our fire around the Ruth Lake and out in Henshaw, and we initiated evacuations out further west into the Humboldt County area. So we've got a lot of concern for today with the results of yesterday's spots. One of the challenges we had that we were not expecting, and it was the new fire start up in ISO, and that's the Zog fire that made about a 10-mile run yesterday, right towards our spike camp out there, which is called our ranch. So we had to evacuate our own firefighters. There was about 400 folks in there. We had to pull up the gear, get them moving. They came into Redding. So one of today's missions is to reestablish those firefighters, that group of people, up towards Hayfork. So if you live up in that country, you'll see firefighters building up in the, I believe it's the fairgrounds. So that the result of that fire is basically another day. We got to move logistics around and get our people in place to do some good work. So just to let you know, what we have is about 1,200 firefighters. That's the engines, crews, the support folks working on this fire. We had 100% accountability yesterday, which was a success for us. A lot going on, a lot of very intense firefighting, very intense fire conditions. We were able to regroup, get good accountability, and be ready to re-engage last night around some structures, and again today. So that was a big part of what we did. Pulled people into safe spots, focused on point protection, structure protection where we could, engaged some of those evacuation areas that we had on our map and worked with the county and the sheriff to do that, and doing what we can to protect the folks and the public who are out there.
Great, thanks, Norman. We know you have a big day ahead of you. We're going to release you to the Command and General Staff meeting now because I know you have to give your intent to the group. Thank you.
Thanks,
and we'll
Cal.
keep coming live throughout the day as needed. Yesterday, Sam and the crew went live 5 times. So our commitment to you is that we'll be here for you. We're not going anywhere. We're fully engaged. This is going to be a big firefight again today. And why don't we have Brooke Tabor go ahead and give us his weather insights, because yesterday you were spot on. And I know folks at home started to pay a lot more attention to how critical this is. We had a couple light days of wind before this fire blew up, and you can see that on YouTube because a couple evenings when I was out on 36, you could see the fire just slowly pulling away from Post Mountain. And then you have a day like yesterday where all hell breaks loose and it's a full-on pyrocumulus column.
Yeah, so yesterday we did see those critical fire conditions. I want to focus on today as the red flag warning continues through 2100 this evening. We're expecting another critical fire day with strong or breezy winds from the east to the west across the area. Not quite as strong as what we saw yesterday, but still looking at 25 to 30 miles per hour on the ridge tops and in some of those aligned valleys. If you live in the Ruth Reservoir area, the winds, instead of being from east to west, will be more southeast to northwest in there, so just be aware of that, as there'll be some channeling.
So they'll be coming up the valley then?
Up the valley, yeah,
Oh,
because
my.
it's a dominant wind direction, even with the gradient that we have today. The good news is, as we get into the afternoon hours, those winds will slowly begin to taper off. So instead of 15 to 20 with gusts up to 30, we're looking at 10 to 15, gusts in the 20 to 25 miles per hour afternoon. And as we get into the evening, we're looking at 5 to 10 with gusts 15 to 20 in the highest elevations. The other thing I want to bring your attention to is that we have a lot of heat out there, and that heat wants to rise and develop a column. The air is unstable.
When you say heat, are you talking about the temperature of the air or the trees that are on fire?
Combination of both. It's warm temperatures and warm fire that has created a lot of heat. That air wants to rise, and it's unstable, lifting, and we're gonna build a column today. And I am a little concerned that we may have a column collapse. That would be a rush of air down to the surface and could create strong and erratic winds. And given the wind flow aloft, that would be in divisions Echo, Charlie, and Alpha would have the highest potential for that. And that would be in the late afternoon, early evening hours.
Let's translate that on the map for folks who like to hear their place names. Mad River, right in this area. So if you're a Mad River resident, Mad River, have a family member out there or work at the ranger station or anything like that, what Brooke's talking about is this area is now in the target of the predominant wind flow for the day, right?
That would be correct, yes.
And also a column collapsing. Now, yesterday, there's 4 or 5 videos on Facebook. You can see the first one from the morning is this huge white pyrocumulus. Then as the afternoon went, you can see that the landscape is shearing out. Did we have what you're describing yesterday, or today, for yesterday, did we have the column collapse?
Yes, I believe we did have a column collapse in the later afternoon, and they did get localized gusts near the spike camp here in Division 21. I think similar conditions today with that potential. Where it exactly occurs is difficult to tell, but the potential is definitely there, so heads up.
Right, and that distributed real-time infrared, that's flying at 30,000 feet and can look down into that ember shower. It has a digital camera, and so today it'll hopefully be flying again for us to let us know. But folks, if you're wondering about Mad Valley or anywhere in here, please, the Trinity County Sheriff's Office emergency offices have got the information on the website. You have to be paying attention today. Let's just run a scenario. The Zog fire started here. We don't know how. It's under investigation. CAL FIRE had it. That's their jurisdiction in the state response area. It ran 8 or 10 miles in a matter of hours. What if a fire had started around Hayfork? What if a brand new start yesterday, somebody made a mistake in Hayfork area, dragged the chain, did something, and it ran 8 or 9 miles? Post Mountain, you listening? That's serious. So when folks from Post Mountain ask us if you should be evacuating because maybe a little bit of fire crosses the highway, you need to be paying attention to the fuels on the landscape. And Chris Moore will dive into that here in a second. Brooke, anything else to add for folks?
Yeah, just one other thing. The winds do calm down as we get into the middle part of the week, become much lighter and terrain driven. I think smoke issues will be a big concern as we get into Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday coming up.
That's that big layer we talked about
Yep,
yesterday.
high pressure building right overhead, a lot of weak steering flow, not a lot of mixing, so post mountain, the roof area, all around the fire, I think is gonna be dealing with very thick, heavy, dense smoke.
Okay, great, Book. Thanks so much for your expertise. We appreciate it. And Chris Moore, who gave us a very good description yesterday morning of how it was going to play out. Chris, how to play out in terms of what you thought and what you saw.
Yeah, the potential that we talked about yesterday morning showed up yesterday afternoon as the fire moved over here. The fire that was, coming down the slope over Ruth wasn't the problem. It was the fire that came from around the Forest Glen area up and over South Fork Mountain and down to the southwest. And the conditions today are just like the conditions yesterday. So we have that same potential that you saw yesterday through all day today until the winds die off. The fuels are just as dry as they were yesterday. The weather is just as severe as yesterday. And we're now in new topography on this side as the fire spreads. So there's plenty of fuel. There's plenty of aligned drainages for the fire to kind of position itself in and then make strong, significant runs up there as it moves. Mainly it looks like towards the southwest, but as Brooke pointed out, when you have big features like the Ruth Valley drainage, that wind can curve around, so don't be surprised by spread in a local area that is different from the overall wind pattern. And he mentioned the column collapse later in the day. That's kind of like a thunderstorm, right? You get these strong outflow winds, and that can spread the fire. If the fire happens to be moving southwest for most of the day, if you have the column collapse, that can make the fire spread in any direction as you get those winds surfacing on the ground. So today is another dynamic day all around the fire in this area, and everyone needs to be paying attention to what's happening where they are.
Great, thanks, Chris. And can you speak to what you know? And I know it's still breaking news about how much fire is across 36, but can you speak to what you know as of now of what crossed 36, what type of fuel it's in, and what type of potential it has?
So I don't have current information. When I was out there yesterday, that fire had just crossed below that 14 road, and they were trying to keep it from spreading any further. But what I do know is that there was a fire in 1987 over here, the Flume fire. And so that's been, almost 30 years. There is lots of dead wood standing on the ground and lots of brush that has grown back, with the fuels being, all the fuels from grass to timber being extremely dry. This area is potential for any kind of rapid fire growth if we get any kind of embers or fire spread in there down in here. So definitely watch out. And then another thing for folks, if you live down in these drainages, the fuels go from timber down to grass and brush, and fire moves much more rapidly in those grass and brush fuels than they do in timber. So if you see something on the ridge and it doesn't seem to be doing anything, that is going to change as soon as it changes fuel type into those lighter, flashier fuels.
Okay, great. And real quick, while I got you up here, let's see if we have any questions from the audience. And if there's not questions now, we'll keep posting them because our information officer is working both here and virtually in Alaska. We'll respond to them throughout the day. And I'm looking over at Mike and Aubrey.
Yeah, and we have right now, we've got more than 760 people watching live right now. First question is, how do firefighters stay safe and get rest during times like this?
Okay, great. And I'm going to bring Norm McDonald back up. Chris is hanging the wings there in case we have a specialist question. And that's a really good question. And thanks, everybody, for joining us today. And thanks for all your support of the firefighters. This is actually the point in your career where it's late September. Some of the crews have been working since May, and they push right on through, and they're kind of looking towards the end of the year as their chance to get back home to their families. Their kids are off at school or working virtually on school at home. And then they have a blow-up day like this, and what is going on there in their minds?
So the question is about how do we get them rested? Is that?
Yes, how they stay safe and get rest during times like this.
All right, well, the staying safe part really comes to part of our plan. That's just our daily briefing we do every day. We've got something we call LCES. It's lookouts, communications, escape routes, safety zones. Those are just part of our daily briefing, hourly briefings as those folks are working on the line. So that safety of their crews out there is the number one, our number one concern. So that's just part of their daily routine. It doesn't matter what fire they're on. As far as the rest part, days like this, they are tough. We had people working extended shifts. We had to evacuate a camp where people should be sleeping late last night. We had fire around Shaw, which is another one of our spike camps, working late around there to make sure that was safe. So they're tough days, but we mitigate that by trying to get people rest through over the next couple shifts. But they're tired. They're working hard. They've already had a long season. It's a concern of ours as we go about our day and our driving. It is a concern. It's something we try to mitigate with 2 to 1. So 8 hours off every day at a minimum. Every 14 days, you try to get people 2 days off to rest. But the honest truth is, come September, October, it's already been a long season, and people are tired, and they've had a long, hard go.
Norma, just one more, because several questions coming in, and some people may have missed the beginning. Again, asking what we can say about any structure damage, Ruth Lake, how it's stretched into Hobart. Maybe that's just something to cover one more time, especially for people who may have missed the beginning.
So we did have fire in Ruth Lake, in and around Ruth Lake. We know there were structures impacted. How many, we don't have accountability of that yet. We'll be working on that over the next few shifts, and as we get that information, we'll share it. We do know up in Forest Glen there was some structures impacted as well. And again, how many, we don't have that information. As we gather that, we'll get that out and release the folks who live around there.
Go ahead.
We had a comment online from someone who mentioned that they believed they had enough water to protect their structure. Can you please speak to the importance of evacuations with smoke inhalation as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for over 30 years, and there are times and structures where it doesn't matter how much water you have, you're not going to be able to protect it. So when we're asking people to evacuate, that's an area where we feel it is unsafe for the public to be in, and often unsafe for our firefighters to be in. So making a decision to try to protect your own house with water is not a good idea. We don't do that with our firefighters, and they're trained and they have equipment. So as somebody who doesn't have that training or the proper equipment or that experience in there, I just highly recommend to heed the evacuation and get out and let the firefighters do their job in there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The wildland fire community has gone through a lot of heartbreak over the years of losing firefighters who were hoping to try to save a structure that can be rebuilt. And you can never replace the family loss that family feels forever. You can never replace that person. You can certainly rebuild a home. And often it's hard to make that decision until the aftermath. So we're here as experienced people who have seen firsthand what happens when people try to make a stand. These fires get colossally big in a short period of time. And Brooke just explained today, again, there's going to be a very large column forming. And it's not a wise decision to stand up against basically something that's a force of nature.
I just want to follow up on that too. So I understand people want to protect their home and what they have out there. I get that. I mean, I live in a place that's fire prone as well, and I understand that. But people need to understand when they stay in their residence and decide not to leave, there are going to be firefighters who push the limit of where they should be, and they're not going to want to leave people in there who have not evacuated, and that puts them at risk. So it's one thing to make a decision to stay in there for yourself, but you have to understand there's firefighters you're putting at risk by staying in there. So when we say to evacuate, we don't take that lightly. I understand what that means to people who live here. We've been through this at lots of places, lots of times, and I understand the impact that has, but you need to understand that directly impacts the safety of our firefighters when you don't leave. So that's why we're asking you, and just please, if it's an evacuation order, heed that advice, heed that direction, and we'll do what we can to get people back in as quickly as we can. And if we're going to do what we can to protect those structures when you're gone from that fire impact. So if you can evacuate, we appreciate that from our guys on the ground, all the way up to our agency administrators who are here. So we want to make sure that's a clear message to the folks who are living out there.
Yep, thanks, Norm. And let's have our agency administrator, Scott, give us that real-life reminder of what to do in an evacuation, what to bring with you. This is your forest. This is your area, right? You've lived here, the Shasta area. Go ahead and...
Yeah, hi, I'm Scott Russell, Forest Supervisor for the Shasta-Trinity National Forest, but I'm speaking on behalf of the Forest Supervisors on all 3 national forests where this fire is engaged, on the Mendocino, and on the Shasta-Trinity, on the 6 Rivers National Forest. You know, for me, first off, my heart goes out to any of you that are impacted by this fire. We know how tough it is. It's been a long year. The reality is we're not done yet. We've got weeks more of this ahead of us with no rain in sight. It's not something you can just hope be gone, because we're going to have to deal with this for a while. But, you know, for me, the point Norm made is so important. Do it now, and or before early, when it's not stressful, where you can handle that activity. I always remember the 5 Ps. If I can remember them, it's people and pets and prescriptions and photos and personal items.
Debit cards, credit cards, plastic.
Yeah, plastic, yes. Bring your money with you. But yeah, it's so much smarter to do it. And when it's calm, you say, oh, I'm just going to stay here and take care of my home. And then when you get a day like yesterday and a day like we're going to have today, all of a sudden you realize that's not the right thing to do, and that's not the time to be trying to evacuate, because it puts you at greater risk. It puts the firefighting operations and their safety at risk. So please heed those warnings. They're not done without recognizing, as Norm talked about, the cost of that and the challenge of that for people. But it's the right thing to do. So.
Absolutely, Scott. And I, like Norm, live in Alaska in a fire-affected community, and twice in the past 4 years we've lost 50 homes in a matter of hours. Mm-hmm. It happens very, very fast. I live in the black, what we call, look at the black here, 2015 Pickett fire scar, picked up fire yesterday. Mm-hmm. So even that area that burned 5 years ago can be part of this column building process. So let's be very cautious today. Let's see if anybody in our, whether it's an agency administrator or on the online audience, has another thought or question for the audience. Okay, thank you so much for joining us today. Big day for the firefighters. We often say in firefighting, go slow to go fast. So today, this morning, they're regrouping like Norm mentioned. They're trying to get their gear together and get a good plan, get water and food and rations in their vehicles so that they have more with them, get hydrated up because it's a big, long fight today. Thanks for supporting the crews. Thanks for supporting each other. Neighbors helping neighbors is the way we all get through this, and the best way to be part of the solution is to listen to the evacuation orders and to communicate with somebody who might not have the technology you do right now to get this information. Thank you so much.